You can have a seat. Well, hey, if this is your first time here, my name's Adam. You picked a good Sunday to come to church. We have just one rule. What? Church just has one. Just for this, and you already missed it. So the rule is you have to laugh at my jokes. It's because I'm sensitive, and actually, how dare you, whoever said it's true. But it really just makes everything better if we have fun. And I know for some of you, you're like, this is church. Maybe you have some past history. You're like, it's supposed to be serious. We like to laugh here, and it's just super awkward when you don't laugh at my jokes because I don't know what to do with it. So even pity laughs are accepted. All right. So I'm going to start. It's Easter, but I want to start in kind of a weird place. I want to start by talking about your height, how tall you are. I know it's weird, but we will go somewhere with this, I promise. If you consider yourself tall, and I'm not asking the person sitting next to you, they don't get to have an opinion. You can have your own opinion about your height right now. If you consider yourself tall, just raise your hand real quick. I want to see how many tall people we have in the room. Okay. Not very many. Interesting. All right, opposite end of the spectrum. If you consider yourself short, and again, I'm not asking the person next to you, they don't get to be any kind of way about this and look at you and give you dirty looks. Don't raise your hand, make some noise if you're short. Make some noise if you're short. Okay. That's what I thought. I didn't have you raise your hand because I didn't think I'd be able to see them. I set you up for that. But in all hey, listen, now there's a guy who comes to our 9 o'clock service every week, and he's like 6'8", and he takes me to the side every once in a while. I was like, hey, I feel really like attacked. And I'm always worried it's like something I said in my sermon. He's like, no, you guys sung about slaying giants today. And I'm nervous. And I'm like, get out of my face. But we attack all heights here. So did you know, during the first century, like when Jesus walked the earth, like when the Gospels were written, that people were shorter back then. They were shorter back then. Men on average were 5'0", and women were 4'9". So even if you made some noise because you were short back then, you probably would have been basically average, right? You could have been the center on the basketball team. It would have been a different world for you. Even weirder thought, odds are you were like either as tall as or taller than Jesus. Like, think about that. Isn't that weird? We usually think of Jesus being this big guy, but he probably, if the average was 5, let's say he was just a little bit below average, Jesus could have been 4'10", 4'9", and taller than him. Weird thought. So what I want to do today is I want to look at a story about a guy in the Bible who's known for his height. There's only 2. Goliath's one of them. He's known for being tall. This guy is known for the opposite. His story is in Luke chapter 19. We're going to start in verse 1. Jesus entered Jericho and made his way through the town. There was a man there named Zacchaeus. He was the chief tax collector in the region, and he had become very rich. He tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. So the writer of the book of Luke is a guy named Luke, and he was actually a medical doctor, the writer Luke here. So what that means is, like, if you're type A and you really like details and order and stuff, that's Luke, man. So if you're a type A and you're looking for a place to start in the Bible, book of Luke is a good place to start. So he tells us here 3 details about Zacchaeus, and they're all important. He doesn't tell us things on accident. So the first thing we learn about Zacchaeus is that he's a chief tax collector. He's not just a tax collector, he's the chief tax collector. So he's not like your normal caseworker. This dude is a regional director. He's a big deal in the tax collecting world. Now, what that means, and I think you probably understand this just intuitively when you hear the word tax collector. I don't know that any of us would say, oh, those tax collector people, I love those guys. The ones that work for the IRS, sweethearts. We just love them. Like, no, especially this time of year, none of us are feeling like that right now, right? So you kind of already know how people generally felt about Zacchaeus, but it was even worse than that because Zacchaeus is collecting tax. He's a Jew who's collecting taxes for Rome, who has conquered Israel and is oppressing Israel. So he's collecting taxes for a foreign invading power. which makes him a traitor. So the Jewish people didn't like Zacchaeus because he collected taxes for Rome, and Rome didn't like Zacchaeus because he was a Jew. So what I want you to see with just this one detail, Luke tells us that Zacchaeus didn't fit in anywhere. He was kind of a man without a people. He never felt like he belonged. And that's an important detail for us to know about Zacchaeus. The second thing we see here about Zacchaeus is that he's rich, but he's not just rich, like he's rich, right? He's like shop at Bueller's rich. You know what I'm saying? Like who does that? That's crazy, right? You don't see him at all. He's over at Bueller. He's not even using coupons or anything. Like he's just straight there. He's like he's not drive a Jeep rich, he's drive a Land Rover rich, okay? And I know Jeep people are always offended by that, but you know it's true. I saw a bumper sticker the other day where it was hilarious. It was on a Land Rover and it said, "Nice Jeep, peasant." I was like, that's awesome. The reason I tell you that, I feel like that's the kind of bumper sticker that Zacchaeus would have had. He kind of, like he was rich and he kind of wanted you to know it a little bit, you know? Now, this also tells us, knowing that he's rich tells us the only way tax collectors got rich is that they would collect more taxes than were necessary and they would keep it for themselves. So if he's rich, then that means he's doing that a lot. So when people saw him, they knew that he was taking their money and taking more than he needed to, and he was keeping it for himself. So when he's rolling down the road in his Land Rover, they're thinking, hey, I paid for that, jerk. So he's a tax collector, he's rich, and then the third detail Luke points out here is that our boy Zach is short. He's short. And he's not just short, right? He's short because everybody's short back then. So if the average is 5 foot nothing, and you're saying this guy's short, like what does that mean? Like what is he, 4'6"? Like he could be 4 foot tall. I mean, a little dude. He's a little dude. Now, those three details. So he's a tax collector, but he's like a tax collector. He's rich, and he's like rich, and he's short, but he's like short. So those three details, Dr. Luke thinks are important for us to remember, and I think they will become important. So here's what happens next, verse 4. So he, Zacchaeus, ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. I just want to point out, so if you grew up in church, you know of Zacchaeus, right? And isn't it crazy? Can you imagine somebody coming to you 2,000 years from now and saying, hey, we still talk about you. And you'd be like, oh, really? What do they say? And for the detail to be, you're short. That's it. And if you grew up in Sunday school, you know the song, right? Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. He climbed up in a sycamore tree for the Lord he wanted to see. And if you didn't grow up in church, you're like, why? What are you doing right now? It's a song. It's a song. All Sunday school kids know it. And the poor guy, that's how we know him, is that he is short. So he climbs this tree. And maybe you're asking the court, why would he do that? You have to, because he could have, he's little. He could have snuck into the crowd, right? He could have weaseled his way in somehow. But you have to keep in mind, in a crowd like that, because if everybody's crowding around Jesus, Jesus is walking down and everybody's milling around him, there's some energy there, there's lots and lots and lots of people. For a tax collector to enter a crowd like that actually would be a dangerous thing. At the very least, he's gonna get some elbows, he's gonna get some shoulders, he might get tripped. But there were some zealots back then, he actually could have got knifed in a crowd like that. They would use that as a opportunity to go after him. So when he saw the crowd, he knew he couldn't go into it. He couldn't get close to Jesus. So he's doing some mental calculations. He sees the crowd moving this way, and he looks over here and he sees a tree, and he runs over and he decides to climb it. And I don't know, that we accept it. If you grew up in church, you accept that as just a normal thing, but that's weird. First of all, how many adults do you see climb trees? Secondly, how many rich adults do you see climb? That's a very undignified thing to do, right? I don't see many rich guys climbing trees. But he does it here. And I imagine the scene that everybody's kind of attention is that way because Jesus is coming this way, and he's kind of looking around is anybody looking at me right now? No, they're all paying attention to Jesus. Cool. And he climbs the tree and he waits, hoping that Jesus is going to come this way. Then verse 5 happens. Verse 5 is so cool. It's so cool. When Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus. When's the last time that happened for him? Has anybody ever looked up at him? Looked up at him and called him by name, Zacchaeus. How did he know his name? He's Jesus, that's how. Quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today. Okay, so I'm really big on like when you're reading a Bible story to like try and put yourself into the Bible story so that you can really like feel what they feel. Because I think when we make reading the Bible an intellectual exercise, you're just reading it like it's not going to have the impact it's supposed to. I really feel like you're supposed to feel what they feel. So this one's a hard one. Let's pop out of the story for a minute and imagine something with me. Use your imaginations here. Let's say I get invited to like a pastor's conference thing with like hundreds and hundreds of other pastors. Let's say it's like a room or 2 or 3 times bigger than this, and there's just all these pastors here. And let's say for one reason or another, who knows why, you come with me. It's me and you going to this pastor's conference. So we're going in there. And also imagine that like all the pastors that are there are like the good kind. I know it's hard, but like just imagine that they like love Jesus, they love God, they're trying to lead their church as well, they love their church, they're not like the slimy whatever thing that pops into your mind when you think of pastors. And yes, again, I got invited somehow. It's imagination. We'll keep going. So there's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these really good guys, really good pastors, love God, do all that stuff. And we come in and we're gonna sit in the back somewhere back there because I'm an introvert and I sit in the back. So the back row people, you're my people because we sit in the back and because we have an escape route and we have to talk to less people on our way out, right? So we're sitting in the back and we're sitting there and let's just say somebody's up here speaking, somebody's here talking, whatever. And all of a sudden, up towards the front, Jesus walks in. And like, it's for real. It's like, and everybody knows it somehow. Everybody knows that it's Jesus, and you know that it's Jesus, and there he is. And if it's a room full of pastors, you have to know, like, nobody's staying in their seat, right? There's one thing that pastors are gonna get excited about. It should be this, right? And it should be this. So they're all gonna get up. And they're coming up, and they're crowding around him, and everybody's trying to shake his hand, give him a hug, talk to him, ask him a question, whatever. And there's just this ruckus kind of forming in the front, but there you are. And I'm just gonna guess you'd feel a little weird in that situation. Not to say you don't wanna go up and talk to Jesus, but it's all these pastors, you know? And you're thinking, well, he's here for a reason. Let's talk to them. So instead of running up and trying to talk to Jesus, what you would do if you're like me is maybe just like jump up on your chair in the back row. Because even if you're not short, Jesus is short, so you're not gonna be able to see him just standing there, so you jump up on your chair so you can see him. And let's just say you do that. You jump up on your chair and you look and there he is. There he is. With a smile that just radiates this depth of joy you've never seen before. And these eyes that just are so loving, and he's shaking hands and he's hugging people, and you're just like, there he is. And you're sitting there, maybe you start to have a moment like, that's him. I'm in the same room. And you're there and you're watching it because you're not gonna take your eyes, you're gonna drink in every moment. And all of a sudden, as you're standing there, you notice that he like looks at you. And you're like, ooh. Because those eyes can look through you right into your soul. And like, that was unexpected. Because you got on the chair to see Jesus. You didn't think about the fact that he was gonna see you. So that maybe messes with you a little bit, and now you're watching and he's working his way through the crowd, and you notice that he's like making his way towards you, and first maybe you think it's a coincidence, and if you're an introvert, you're like, okay, the crowd's coming this way, and your heart rate's going a little bit faster, and then he looks at you again, and then you're like, there's no doubt that he's coming this way, and then you have that thing that you regret getting on the chair now. Because you can't get down because it looks like you're running from Jesus. You don't want to run from Jesus, but you also don't want all the attention that you're getting because everybody notices that he's walking towards you, and here you are, and there he is, and boom, he's standing right in front of you, and he looks up at you, and he calls you by name, and he says, hurry down, I'm gonna go to lunch with you. Imagine how you'd feel in that room with all these guys, all these pastors who are good guys who have probably really important questions and lots of people they're leading and all this big spiritual mission, and Jesus cuts through all that and he goes to you. That would be crazy. You'd hurry down, right? Be like, let's go. Jesus, pastors are asking if they can come with you. You'd be like, no, thank you. It's just me. We're going to Chick-fil-A. It's Sunday, but he's going to make it so that it's open somehow. He's Jesus. I don't know. How you would feel in that situation, like for real, if you could let that actually impact you. That's actually not all of how Zacchaeus felt. How he felt was even more than that, because the crowd hated his guts, and the crowd absolutely didn't think Jesus should want to have anything to do with him. He would have been absolutely blown away that Jesus cut through everybody and went to him. Now I want to look at a detail in that verse 5. So if you throw that back up there. Again, he looks up at Zacchaeus, he calls him by name, and then he said, quick, come down. Other translations say hurry. Now, I want to talk to you for a minute. If you grew up in church, if you're like a good Christian and all that stuff, like if you grew up in church and let's say you like read Christian articles and stuff, maybe you even watch sermons that other pastors preach. I don't know why, but maybe you do. I didn't laugh at that one. Write that down. You've probably, if you're like me, you've been told almost your whole life that Christians aren't supposed to hurry. Right? That's not a thing that we're supposed to do. Christians aren't supposed to hurry. God is never in a hurry, right? Have you heard that? God's never in a hurry. God is Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, right? He's never early, he's never late, he arrives precisely when he means to, and that's God. So God follows his own rhythms of grace and love, and God moves and flows through time, and he's never trying to get somewhere faster than he's already currently going. So if that's God, you're supposed to get into that rhythm, and you're never supposed to be hurrying. And I've even been told that a spirit of hurry is from the devil. I've been told that before. I searched Christian articles on hurry. Let me just read a couple of titles to you that I found just Googling it. Hostage to hurry, recovering the human pace of love. You have to say that breathy. That's how that title's supposed to be said. The problem with hurry, ruthlessly eliminate hurry. How hurry sickness is stealing your time with Jesus. But here, Jesus looks up at this little guy in a tree and says, hurry, hurry down. Why? Because I'm going to assume that Jesus arrived at the base of this tree precisely when he meant to, right? So he wasn't in a hurry, but he tells Zacchaeus, hurry down. Hurry down. Why? So think with me for a minute about the things that separate Zacchaeus from Jesus in this story. Think with me for a minute about the things that separate Zacchaeus from God in his life based off of what you know about him now. The first thing that pops to my mind is his height, right? His height actually separates him from Jesus. It creates a barrier between him and Jesus. Something he was born with. Something he was born with in his DNA from go created a barrier between him and Jesus. Second thing that separated him from Jesus was people. People created a barrier between him and Jesus. Matter of fact, I would say a large part of the crowd at least was religious people. Religious people were creating a barrier, actually keeping him away from God. By the way, opposite of what religious people are supposed to do, but in this case, that's what they're doing. Third thing I would say was a barrier between him and God is his attachment to other things. You just kind of get the impression that Zacchaeus likes that he's rich. He likes the status and the power and all the stuff that can his Land Rover and the bumper sticker and all that stuff. He's got all that going on, and he likes all that. And I think that draw to those things creates this separation from God. And then the final thing I'll list, use the word, his sin. I think Zacchaeus knew he wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing, right? He knew he was living in a way that was displeasing to God. I think, and you probably would say, if I build my entire wealth on money I took from people that I shouldn't have took from people, I'd say you'd probably be like, yeah, we're not really doing this the right way. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. On top of that, there's a strong chance that the way he was doing, like the way he was doing that, the way he was living his life, probably meant that like if he walked by a synagogue or walked up to the temple, that they wouldn't let him in because of his choices. So all of that was creating this separation, this barrier between him and Jesus. And he climbs this tree, I don't know what, to close the gap between him and God? He climbs this tree in order to connect with Jesus in some way, right? That was the point of climbing the tree. He wanted to see Jesus. He wasn't able to see Jesus, so he's climbing this tree in order to do that. I think the reason I'm drawn to this story, I'm going to guess that many of us in this room, maybe you, are just like Zacchaeus. You have some barriers between you and God. Maybe it's something about the way you were born. Something about the way you were born creates a barrier, creates this separation between you and God. And I don't know what that could be. Maybe it's a family thing. Maybe the family you were born into isn't exactly conducive to faith in God. And you didn't do any. You didn't choose that. You didn't choose your family. You didn't choose to be born that way. But here you are. And it has created this separation, this barrier. Maybe it's people. Maybe for you in your life, people have actually created a barrier to God instead, and maybe it's religious people. Maybe you've had some circumstances happen, some things happen. Maybe you used to go to church and you had a bad experience, or maybe a group of religious people really, really, really turned you off, and instead of helping you connect with God, they ended up causing you to walk away from him. Or maybe, if you're honest, maybe it's your attachment to other things. Maybe you're so caught up in some other stuff in your life that you're magnetically pulled towards that, and that, by its very nature, is creating a separation from you to God. Or maybe, if you're going to get real honest, and I know it's church and we don't do that in church, but if we're going to get real honest, maybe you would even say that your sin separates you from God. That you have been making some life choices that you know separate you from him, that would displease him in some way, and it's caused you to kind of recoil away because of those choices. And then maybe you're also like Zacchaeus in that he climbed a tree to connect with Jesus, and maybe you kind of do the same thing, not physically climbing a tree, but like you feel like, and maybe you don't actually think this, but like subconsciously somewhere you think you have to do a bunch of stuff for God to love you. Like even if you used to be a really good Christian or whatever, and now you feel like you faded away, you feel like you have to do a bunch of stuff before God will love you. You have to do a bunch of stuff before God will accept you back. Maybe, and forgive me, maybe some of you have a little bit too much like of a Catholic residue left on you still. And you feel like you got to say 10 Hail Marys and take 2 Tylenol and pray in the morning, and then I'll be all right. Like I have to do that stuff before I can actually be accepted and loved by God. You're climbing trees to connect with God. So listen, the reason Jesus told him to hurry. See, some of you are like, this isn't an Easter message. You missed, right? It's chapter 24, not chapter 19, stupid. What are you supposed to be? A different story. Here's your Easter connection. Jesus told Zacchaeus to hurry down from his tree because Jesus is on his way to climb one. When Jesus leaves Jericho, which is where he's about to leave, he goes straight to Jerusalem to die on the cross. And there's even a verse in there that talks about Jesus setting his face towards Jerusalem. He has this interaction with Zacchaeus. It's like the last thing. And then he goes to Jerusalem to die. So he tells Zacchaeus to hurry down because he's about to climb up one. 1 Peter 2:24 says this, he himself bore our sins in his body on the tree, that we might die to sin and live to righteousness. By his wounds you have been healed. So Peter, writing this here, uses the word tree to talk about the cross. Zacchaeus, stop climbing the tree to try and connect to God because Jesus is about to go climb one. See, Zacchaeus is climbing in his attempt to be able to connect, but Jesus is going to climb the tree. Jesus is going to climb the tree in order for us to connect with God. I mean, think about the story. Who eliminated those barriers in the story? Was it Zacchaeus or was it Jesus? Jesus is the one who cut through everything, right? Jesus got through all the barriers and went to Zacchaeus. It's the same way in your life. Jesus wants you to hurry and stop trying to earn his love. That's the thing. Hurry down from earning God's love. Hurry down from trying to get God's good approval in your life by living some kind of way. That's not what it means to be a Christian. Jesus climbed so you don't have to. That's the message of Easter. He climbed the tree so you don't have to keep climbing trees. But let's be honest, even that's not Easter yet. We're not celebrating on Easter Jesus' death. We're celebrating on Easter the fact that Jesus didn't stay dead, right? It's not the crucifixion that makes this story very special. I don't know if you know this, but like tens of thousands of people were crucified around the first century. Tens of thousands. Rome really liked doing this. I don't know why, but here's the thing. You know none of their names, right? None of them. You know none of the names of the people who were crucified. Just one. And it's because his ended a little different than the rest of them, right? So Easter is about Jesus not staying dead. Now, can I talk to you for a minute if like that sentence is something that maybe you struggle with a little bit? Like, let's be real, it's Easter, you're here, maybe somebody invited you, maybe they bribed you to come, or maybe they threatened you, I don't know. I know at least one person in here is because they got threatened, so I listened in the lobby. Maybe you're here and when you hear me say this, and I hope you knew, like you gotta know that the guy on stage is gonna be biased. Like I know I'm biased, I believe that Jesus rose from the dead, like you gotta know you're gonna hear that perspective. But maybe you're sitting there going, yeah, I'm not in that same place. So can I talk to you for a minute, if that's you? Just not quite there yet. Can you do something for me here? And I think if you struggle with this, you tend to approach it from the negative, right? You tend to approach it from, yeah, but what about this? And I have this doubt and I have this question and I have this. And like, it'd take a lot for me to get to the place where I would say, yeah, I believe that Jesus rose from the dead. And I get all that, but that you have to know you're coming at it from a certain angle. So I want to ask you to do something with me right now, mentally. I want you to take all the questions and all the doubts and just set them aside for a moment. And I'm not asking you to do this permanently, just for the next couple minutes with me. And consider, like, what if you flipped it around and you asked the question, what if it's true? What if it's true? So come sit on my side of the table for a minute and look at it from my perspective. What if this thing that we're talking about actually happened? What if 2,000 years ago, there was a guy who was brutally executed by the world power of the day, was put in a tomb, and 3 days later, he just said, no, I'm not doing that. And he came out of that grave like for real. What if it actually happened? Just consider, again, I know your doubts are talking again, tell them to shut up just for a minute, not, you have to keep telling them to shut up. Just for now, consider, you have to come around to this side and consider, what if it's true? What if that actually happened? That's crazy, right? Because you have to consider, like, that's the most important thing ever, because we all face death. That's the one thing we all have in common. We're all facing that. Death is our great enemy. All of us, whether we want to think about it or not, are gonna face that one day. And it is like a black, clear light absorbing wall that we will all face one day, and you can't get around it, over it, under it, anything. You have to face it. And some of you know this. If you lost loved ones, you know that death is just such a frustrating enemy. There's nothing you can do about it. We all face it. So if there's a guy who actually is saying, I beat that. The one thing nobody's ever beat, I beat it. Like that should mean something, right? Again, tell your doubts to shut up. I'm not asking questions right now. I'm just asking you to consider, what if it's true? Because if it's true, if he really did, wouldn't you wouldn't you want to hear what he had to say? Wouldn't you want to listen to everything he had to say? If this guy could stand up to that monster death and actually win, wouldn't you want to know what he had to say? Because listen, Jesus had some crazy, amazing things to say. You know, Jesus talked about purpose. He talked about fulfillment. He talked about forgiveness. He talked about eternal life. Like if he really did beat death, don't you want to know what he has to say about those things? What if it's true? What if he really did? And like, if it is, all those things that I think your soul longs for. I think you long for purpose. I think you long for fulfillment. I think you long for forgiveness, a way to make the wrongs right. I think you long for eternal life. If Easter is true, all those things which have been eluding you are found in the man who conquered death, Jesus Christ. They're there. What if it's true? What if you could have purpose, like deep, ripple into eternity purpose in your life? What if you could have fulfillment, like soul satisfying water in the desert, live life full fulfillment? What if you could have forgiveness? Like even that thing that pops into your mind when you think of worst things I've ever done. Even that thing that pops in, a thing that you can't seem to get a handle on, that thing that you can't seem to stop. What if you could have forgiveness? What if you could stand before God clean, head up? What if you could have eternal life? Not just like a buzzword, but for real. What if death was not your end? What if your tombstone wasn't like the final word on you? What if it's all true? I gotta tell you, and I'll let you can have your doubts back now. But my side of the table, your side of the table is pretty bright over here. I live my life with a lot of hope and a lot of peace, believing that it is true. And I just want to compare, if you're feeling a little different, to say that maybe it's because we come at this thing from two separate angles. I'd like you to consider flipping around here. Now, let's get to the end of the story. I have to show you what happens with Zacchaeus here because it's so important. So verse 6, remember Jesus just told him to hurry down Zacchaeus. In verse 6, Zacchaeus hurries down. He quickly climbs down and he took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. Look at how he feels because this happened. But the people were displeased. He has gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner, they grumbled. So he's skipping along with Jesus, so excited. Come to my house. Nobody ever comes to my house. Nobody likes me. Nobody, my house is always empty. It's always clean. Nobody's ever there. Like, come to my house. And on the way, there's these grumbling. He probably, if you're Zacchaeus, you're probably seeing people whispering and saying stuff about you. But Jesus is next to him. So on one level, he just doesn't care anymore. And I want to say to you, if that's been the thing, and maybe that is for you, maybe it's people that have been the barrier between you and God. It's been people, it's been the judgment or the whatever from people. I just want to say that's the lamest reason ever to not connect with your creator. Don't let people, matter of fact, don't give them the satisfaction. You want to rebel against religious people? Then come follow Jesus. They won't know what to do with it. They want to do with it. I mean, that's one of my favorite other Easter stories, the thief on the cross who turns to Jesus at his death and says, remember me when you come to my kingdom. And Jesus says, I'll see you in paradise. Dude didn't do anything. Didn't do one good thing his entire life. And Jesus said, come on in, let's go. I'm paying for all that you did right now. You're paying for it physically, I'm paying for it spiritually, you're in. Piss all the religious people off royally with that one, right? Do it. That's the best way to rebel. So here's what happens. They get to Zacchaeus' house. I just imagine they're like having dinner or something. Verse 8, meanwhile, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord. I just imagine he just like gets up. He's just like so excited. And he said, I'll give half my wealth to the poor, Lord, and if I've cheated people in their taxes, I'll give them back 4 times as much. He's just so excited. And that's crazy. Even that, like think about it, he's just so pumped that Jesus came to his house that he just can't help but, I'll give 50% to the poor and 400% to anybody I've cheated. The math doesn't work, but whatever. I think what he's expressing is this idea that he's gonna give everything he has and he's gonna give everything he doesn't have because of this connection with Jesus. And here's how Jesus responds, verse 9. He responded, salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. I bet that broke Zacchaeus. Luke doesn't write it down, but I bet that broke him. He didn't feel like a true son of Abraham. People didn't call him, they called him a son of something, but it wasn't that. So when Jesus says, no, you're in this family. I'm gonna die for you to be in this family. You're in the family, man. I think it broke him. And then verse 10, Mosaic, if you go here, this is our verse. This is supposed to be in the DNA of this church. For the Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost. We're supposed to do the opposite of what the crowd did, church. We're supposed to bring them to Jesus, not keep them away from him. They need him. We don't try to ask people to clean up before coming to Jesus. That doesn't make any sense. That's the opposite of the story. And did you notice the order? Did you notice the order? Listen, if you're like, maybe you're a Christian, you're like, oh, I'll try that Mosaic church. You need to know this about this church and about the way we think. The order was so important. The story did not go, Jesus walks up to this tree, looks up at Zacchaeus and says, hey man, heard some things about you. Stealing money. You need to make that right. You need to get your life in order. You need to give all that stuff up. You need to do some good stuff. And then when you get all that together, I'll come to your house. That's not what happened, is it? Jesus didn't tell him, clean up first, and then I'll come hang out with you. Jesus said, hey, hurry down, hurry. He accepted him, he loved him, and then in response, Zacchaeus said, I'll give you everything I have and everything I don't have, I'm yours. I'll give you everything, my whole life. It was the order's important, Christian. Jesus loved him first, Jesus accepted him first. Jesus knew that he's on his way to climb a tree so Zacchaeus could come down from the tree. And then in response, Zacchaeus can't help but say, I'll give you everything. So Christian, I wanna ask you the same question I was asking the skeptic earlier. What if it's true? What if Jesus really did rise from the dead and you're like, yeah, I believe that. I guess what I'm asking is like, do you have the right energy with your life if you really do believe it? Like look at Zacchaeus. Look at the energy, look at the Zacchaeus energy that he has, like this, I'll give you everything because I know that something changed inside of him. He was impacted with this love that he'd never felt before, with this acceptance that he'd never felt before, impacted to the point that he's like, I'll give you everything. If we really believe that this Jesus guy stepped out of a grave, I guess I just want to ask, does your life match that energy? Do you have a resurrection vibe going on? And if not, let's get it back. Let's get it back. Man, Easter flips everything. Do you realize that? Zacchaeus climbs a tree to see Jesus, but instead Jesus sees Zacchaeus, and you need to know Jesus sees you. Maybe that's the only thing you need to know today is that he sees you. Maybe you felt ignored or forgotten, but he sees you. Zacchaeus climbs a tree to try and connect with Jesus, but instead Jesus climbs a tree to connect with Zacchaeus, and you need to know that Jesus died for you on a cross in your place for your sin. Zacchaeus had so many barriers between him and God, right? His height, people, sin. And it wasn't Zacchaeus that busted through the barriers, it was Jesus. So if you're sitting there going, I got all this stuff between me and God, and I gotta figure out a way to break through it. No, you don't. Jesus did. He's coming from the other side. He wants to break through the barriers to get to you. The message of Easter is that nothing is going to stop God from getting to you. That's the message of Easter. Stop thinking you got to climb your way to God. You don't. He climbed down. No Roman Empire can stop him. Not death or demons, not sin or Satan. Nothing can stop God from getting to you. I just want to do something a little different here. Worship team, why don't you guys come back up here? If you haven't noticed, if you're newer here and you're like, this is different, we do usually do things a little different here, but I want to do something, so I'll call it old school. I'm going to have everybody bow their heads and close their eyes. And forgive me if you're like, oh, this is giving me PTSD from the Baptist church I used to grow up in. Good. Because here's what I want. I want to clear you up to be able to connect with God right now. So maybe you're not there yet. Maybe you're that skeptic that I was talking to, and I just want to say, do you know you don't have to have all your questions answered? You don't have to have everything figured out, and you certainly don't have to get your life together before you can actually connect with Jesus, before you can actually put your faith in Jesus. All he wants is the seed of faith. And you can do it right now. You can make that decision right now. And here's what I would ask of you. If you're in that place and you've never put your faith in Jesus, you can right now in your seat, in your head, pray a prayer. And it's super simple. Just pray, Jesus, I give you my life. And you guys are gonna have way more conversations than that in the coming weeks and years and all that. But I think that's the starting place, is to just say, Jesus, I give you my life. And maybe you don't even know all that means yet, but there's a posture of surrender there where you say, man, I believe. And maybe that's not you. Maybe you're the Christian. Maybe you're the Christian that does not have that Zacchaeus level energy anymore. You believe, but you don't have quite, your life doesn't match the fact that our God told death no, that he stepped out of the grave, and maybe you need to get that back. And I think all of these things begin with a choice. So maybe today is the day where you want to make a statement and say, I'm gonna put a flag in the ground. I'm gonna get back to this. I'm gonna stop, I'm gonna climb down from the tree and accept that he loves me and let that love grow into something in my life. So with every head bowed and every eye closed, if you've made one of those two decisions today to say, Jesus, I give you my life, or Jesus, I need to get that Zacchaeus level energy back in my life, would you do something right now? Would you just raise your hand? Raise your hand right now and say, Jesus, I give you my life. Jesus, I need to get back to that energy in my life. I need more of you. Thank you. Pray with me. Jesus, this is it, man. This is the day. I've been praying for weeks that your resurrection would be made real today. Real in the hearts of the people here, Lord. So I pray for the person right now, that skeptic who has a lot of questions, who has a lot of barriers. I pray that they would just open their hands, climb down from the tree, and accept that you love them. Accept that you died for them. Pray for an opening of eyes and a softening of hearts. Lord, I pray for the Christian who's not living with a Zacchaeus level energy, who isn't living with a resurrection level energy in their life. Lord, I pray that we would get back to it, Lord. Not back to climbing trees, but climb down and accept that you love us and really allow that love to impact us, change the way we live. Thank you so much for the cross, and thank you so much for that empty tomb. In Jesus' name I pray.